projects that they are involved in and have been involved in over the years, both separately and together, that I'm actually just going to let them introduce themselves. So let's start with you, CJ. Tell us who you are and a little bit, whatever you want to share about the amazing work that you do in the world or other things that you do in the world.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am CJ, CEO of the Black Cultural Zone Community Development Corporation. Always glad to be here. Thank you all for making the space for us to talk about this topic because it is truly essential to the work we do, cultural placemaking, placekeeping. The Black Cultural Zone Community Development Corporation was formed by the East Oakland Black Cultural Zone Collaborative, of which we're a proud partner. And that is connected to Tommy. And I definitely want him to talk more about the roots of the Black Cultural Zone, which he was involved in. The work we do is really around centering Black arts and culture as a strategy to hold place for Black people and Black business and legacy Black communities like East Oakland that are rapidly displacing people of color, not just Black people. And by using that as a strategy to really hold place that we are here, we've been here, and we are going to be here. And not just talk, we have to actually hold place by developing, acquiring and developing place and centering Black arts and culture by building a strong economy so folks can afford to live here, by changing the economy to be one that's more cooperative and collaborative, which is more our culture as opposed to this culture that we are in currently. The individual is not elevated, it's the community to hold space together and to improve quality of life. I'm a native of East Oakland, California, born and raised. My family's house is still on 84th by the liquor store on East 14th Street. And so we've seen quite a bit of change. And it saddens me to see that people only see East Oakland as a place where there's violence, a place where there's gates and fences, a place where kids don't play, because that is not the neighborhood that I grew up in before crack hit our neighborhoods. People don't believe me when I say, you didn't see trash, you didn't see abandoned cars, you didn't even see gates. We didn't have fences and gates until crack, but it's true. And one of the things that we love to do is to show that, to bring back that culture. And one of our current cultural hubs is at Liberation Park. It's a vacant piece of land, a little over an acre, Eastmont Mall, which was a sort of a retail icon back in the day, that we've activated from an abandoned lot to a really vibrant place that really holds our values of arts and culture and community, and a bit of a place where folks can see each other. You can get food, et cetera. But most important is that you see the kids playing, you see the kids laughing, running around. Their parents don't even know where they are, but they know that they're safe. That's the neighborhood I grew up in. And it's really beautiful to see that the kids enjoy it, that I know that 20 years from now, they're gonna be like, well, no, we had fun in East Oakland. We did these kind of things. And I hope that they will guard that as I am trying to guard that. So I'll stop there and pass it over to Tommy and look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, CJ. My name is Tommy Wong, and I'm a fan of Carolyn Johnson and the Black Cultural Zone. I'm just amazed. I just want to start by saying I'm so happy that CJ is at the helm of the Black Cultural Zone, because I was there in the beginning when it was just talk, and CJ is really putting money where mouths are, putting putting roller skating rinks into places that haven't been there before, and it's really special. And so I really appreciate being here with you. So I represent two different organizations. One is Good Eatz, that supports small food businesses throughout Oakland. And we've worked with probably around 60, 70 different businesses right now across 5 different cultural districts and business districts on general business district strategy, on marketing, and specifically around food and culture. And then the other half of what I do is called Civic Design Studio. And that is a long time effort that was born out of where I met CJ, which was Eastside Arts Alliance and Cultural Center. And it is focused on arts, education, design, and now STEM. We work across 6 different OUSD schools, Peralta College Systems, UC Berkeley, and a range of industry partners along career technical education pathways. So these two different things convene where culture is concerned. And so I'm very happy to be here, and yeah, happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both. So I know that both of you have a very long history of collaboration and working together in community. And I've been lucky enough to drop in for little pieces of that as well over the years. But just wondering if you can share, like, how did y'all meet? How did you start collaborating? What does that look like today in practice?
Sure. I met Tommy when I was working at a place called the Northern California Community Loan Fund, which is now Community Visions. And I was responsible for grant making for nonprofits who wanted to build out their own own their building. So East Side Arts Alliance is and he'll know more, he'll be able to explain more, a collective, a multicultural collective of folks who are cooperatively managed, and they wanted a place. And so I think I vaguely remember Tommy might have been involved in, I could be wrong, what I called graffiti. He's like, it's not graffiti, it's art. And I was like, all right, I'm sorry. But he was always that cool guy that was doing stuff and always seemed really grounded. And so that was one of the projects that I helped to fund and got involved in very, very early. And so East Side Arts Alliance was the group that actually, the collective group was the one that said, hey, we need a Black cultural zone, because they recognized the displacement very early on. And they just said, we just need to center arts. And I met Tommy again when I was working at the East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation, and he was doing a lot of great things in Chinatown and just doing the Tommy thing, always thinking community, always being creative, always on the cutting edge, always pushing the margins. And he did that when I was as a commercial real estate director at Eatz, the same, to really think bigger, think broader, think art, think culture, think connection. So Tommy's kind of like, I don't know, I can't even describe it. He is my touchstone, just the person that I know is real, that will keep it real. And then, of course, when I left Eatz to go to the Black Cultural Zone, whenever I could think of arts and creative, I was like, well, where's Tommy? I gotta call Tommy. And Tommy was doing the same thing. So we've just had this long relationship of respect for each other and understanding of our community. And we're just on the same page. And a lot of people in Oakland are on the same page. And I'm gonna stop after this because a lot of people come sometimes and say, Black Culture Zone, does it mean if I'm Asian, I can't come, or white? And I'm just like, oh, you're not from Oakland, are you? That's just not how we roll here. So where are you from, girl? Where are you from, boy? That's so cute. But we already know, like, it's just Oakland and this is who we are. My Dr. Jen Tran said something once. She said, yes, Oakland is, has been known as a Black city, but Black folks in Oakland are different because of our multiculturalism. There's not many cities like ours where you have intimate interactions with people outside of your ethnic group and you don't even trip about it. It's like, well, that's just what it is. So I'm a different Black person for being in Oakland, as Tommy is a different person from being in Oakland, from our ethnic connections. And it's just beautiful. And so when people come and they try the divisive talk and, well, what about us and what about these folks, we know they're not from here. So I'll pass it to Tommy.
She overstated everything. And so to pat her on the back, like, when we did meet at Eatz, she was working on projects like Spark It Place, which is in West Oakland at the California Hotel. She was involved in commercial real estate, like especially commercial ground floors, which Eatz, if anybody knows, East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation is an affordable housing developer. And they're very unique in that they think of things outside of just the affordable housing development. They think about community, they think about neighborhoods, they think about commerce. And so CJ is one of those people that's a unicorn in the community. I mean, Oakland is filled with unicorns. CJ is that unicorn that is doing what she's doing now in a very, very impactful way, not just for the city, but nationally, right? Like, people are looking at this. People have been talking about this for such a long time. And CJ is the one that's really not just project managing the whole thing to fruition, but also spiritually guiding it and like giving it the heart that it needs. Because there's so many developments going on in all different levels, whether it's affordable or market rate, but there's very few efforts that are happening at this scale that has the heart that CJ brings, CJ and others, right? Like, CJ is the leader of groups of people that have been wanting change, that have been systematically denied that have been, like marginalized. And she not only has lived it, she lives it currently. And so, yeah, that's my explanation of CJ.
Great. Tommy or CJ, is there anything you want to add about how you're currently collaborating? Black Cultural Zone, Good Eatz, Civic Design Studio. I know that the work is just so kind of like organically intertwined. And yeah, so if you could like try to just describe it a little bit to give our audience a little bit of a picture of like the beauty and the deepness of your collaboration.
You first, and then I'll fill in the gaps.
Okay, so I'll back it up just a few years ago. CJ is a graduate of Castlemont High School, which is right near Eastmont Mall, where the Black Cultural Zone's Liberation Park is. We started really focusing on that area when CJ and I started talking, and other people as well, not just us, about finding a place for what Liberation Park became and is becoming. We talked about roller skating rinks. We talked about Eastmont Mall. We talked about the fact that Eastmont Mall used to be an automotive industry back in the 20s and 30s, like around that era, and that there hasn't been something defining in that era, in that area for many, many years. And all of a sudden, here comes the Black Cultural Zone. Here comes Acta Nonverba Farms. Here comes Planting Justice Farms. Here comes Castlemont High School with the only OUSD farm. There's many, many things that CJ and I have been discussing, talking about in terms of making East Oakland, which hasn't had definition, quote unquote, for many years, become the heart of the Black Cultural Zone, not just in Oakland, but in the Bay Area. And so I think what we are always in parallel on is the development of Liberation Park, Acoma Market, the businesses that are going to be coming out of there. And so it's just a constant conversation about that. CJ, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think in addition to, that Castlemont connection, the students there with the guidance of Tommy and the instructors there and those programs that Tommy shepherds really helped us think about that Liberation Park, and they did layouts, and they really make the students, we had many students who came and helped out in the very early days when it was just a dirt patch, and we were passing out 3 meals a day, 3 days a week to folks. And so that really helped people understand that we are truly really here to understand what people want. And that was guidance. Tommy also, always is looking for ways to help us grow and connecting us with folks that sort of in the fabrication and garment and apparel industry. And we've been talking about that as a pathway for Black and brown folks to really control their own fate. We've talked about the things that can be done connecting our communities. So we've talked about, I always dub it the Flatlands Alliance, Black Cultural Zone, Unity Council, Vietnamese Chamber, Chinatown Chamber, those folks who, I call them the folks who, how can we connect? And we talked about how, not necessarily in the African American culture, but in the African culture, Asian culture, Latin culture, there's a lot of night markets. And so we talked about how we can, build we want to build this network of night markets where we can visit different places and really bring that culture back. We talked about how food really bridges our community and how food is a basis for conversation. We came up with some really cool ideas, and I'm still crediting Tommy for spices, the cooking competition we want to have. So if a yam is in everybody's culture, how can we bring all of our communities together and do something with the yam, and then take that recipe home, and then take some seeds home, and then talk about it and realize that we're much more connected than not connected. And so those are some of the ideas. And yes, we talked about the roller skating rink, and it is here. And we also talked about a very amazing movie screen. Tommy, I still have that picture of that movie screen that you showed me, because we show films. And so, yeah, we have a whole list. There's a whole list of ideas that I periodically go back to and be like, yep, we talked about that, let's do that. And then going forward, with Good Eatz, they came through in terms of really helping us focus our food efforts during the pandemic, what we were doing, and also with the market, they spend a lot of time with us in terms of social media and marketing strategy, and the concept of that it should feel like a homecoming when you come to the Acoma market, and what should its niche be. And we hope to continue to work with them on that. And so, yeah, we continue to work together because, again, when you really know folks are from where you are, know who you are, and we're very unique in Oakland. I mean, just comfortable to work with folks who are qualified, who are competent, and culturally just right on point. So that's my story, sticking with it.
Love it. So as you all know, the Lunar Project is focused on solidarity, specifically building cross-racial solidarity between Asian American and Black and Indigenous communities. And one of our main forms of programming right now, aside from these public webinars, is a giving circle that meets once a week. We actually have a few giving circle members in attendance today. And something we've been talking about a lot is what solidarity means to us. So wondering if you can both share how you think about solidarity, and also what you think it takes to move from the theory to the practice.
That was coming. You know, solidarity, it's so interesting watching sort of, you know, when I see the elders in Chinatown being hurt and harmed, it is brutal to watch. And it is brutal to watch what appears to be Black bodies doing that. And I always go, well, who are their mothers? What in the hell is that? And I think it's sometimes used as a wedge to say that is that experience between our communities. And I think it's our responsibility, one, to really be clear that any abuse of any elder by anyone is unacceptable, and to hold our communities all collectively responsible, to also show collectively the story of the other side, the story of the unity, the anti-story, and to make sure that that is elevated as well. There are different positions on police in the communities for different reasons, but it's important to respect both ends of those, and to respect that there can be a middle and that there can be some common ground, and there should be differences. I mean, I have differences in my family, so there can be differences. Like my brother is very different than my younger brother. They're completely different, and that is okay. So solidarity means understanding that and not allowing either the industries that exist that will seek to separate us to get away with it, and to be clear that yes, that is wrong. And by the way, you didn't show all the other things of where we're together. I think it's showing up for each other, the events, and in creating opportunities to work together with arts and culture. We had a program where some of our young crew members went to folks in Chinatown to learn how to make smoothies. And they, oh my God, it was the best experience ever. They were so excited about it. And they made friends. And so by creating those opportunities to actually get past what I call what has been called the single story of the other, that is really important, because it just makes it connection, real food. The theory, as you say, of it is to really talk about it, talk to your family members about it. I have some family members that say things and I'm just like, nope, not cool, not acceptable, and explain why, your friends, and then to show it, but to really also check yourself. Sometimes that gut reaction to something, you have to pull it out and say, well, what made me feel this way, and what made me boil it down to this, and be honest about it. So conversations are important, which is why I think food as a precedent to conversations, and then connection. When we work together, when we actually work together and get to know each other, it can't be a single story. It's not possible for you to conflate and aggregate it down to one thing. These people are this, or these people are that. So you have to really commit to it, to reach outside of your circle, but also know that we're in a very unique place, that we got neighbors that are all different ranges, and we really should access that. But most importantly, to know the truth. I mean, we all know the history of this country. We know whom the first law, horrible ethnic law was against, who was actually detained, taken from their homes, and things taken from them in this country. And we have to make sure that people understand those stories, and we have to fight that the truth rises to the top, and that we agree around strategy, that strategy has a range, and that we respect and talk to each other. We just got to talk. Tommy.
It was about solidarity, right?
Yeah, what
yes.
solidarity means to you? How do you move from theory to practice?
Yeah, so I think well, many different things, right? Like back when the Third World Liberation Front created ethnic studies at Berkeley, that was Black, Brown, and Asian at that time, right? Centered in the Black Panther Party and the inspiration that it had, and the understanding that the Black experience in the US is the American experience, right? And now we have immigrants, and now we have all this stuff happening in hate, you know, like the Haitian immigrants and all this kind of stuff. And so there's things that cannot be melting potted, obvious, right? Like everyone's experience is different. Slavery is different from immigration. There's differences in, like, there's so many different things. And so I think it's very important that dialogue and relationship be strengthened across, like, you know, like CJ was just saying, you know, we always talk, and sometimes things happen, sometimes things are at rest, but we're always vibing with each other. We're always like bouncing ideas off of each other as, I don't want to say leaders, but as people, you know, like for our communities. So that's number one. Communication always, honesty always. I will come from a different privilege standpoint than other people. Different, you know, there's all this stuff. But honesty between folks that represent communities is very important. Communication is very important. But really the understanding in you know, in the past, it's been united fronts, right? You have Black, Brown, and Asian fronts strengthening within their communities and then working together towards liberation and change. Now it's a little more muddied, right? Especially in the belly of the beast. We're in Northern California, richest real estate all over anywhere. So what does that mean, you know, as opposed to a third world country? You know, things like that have to be continually argued over. It has to be struggled with. It has to be confronted in an effort to work together. And then at a very simple level, you know, it's like places like a Como market and things like that, that has to be supported, right? Like I want, you know, CJ wants, and we want all the people that make Oakland diverse in every district. You know, Fruitvale is not just Mexican, and the Black Cultural Zone is not just Black, and Chinatown is not just Asian. It's super mixed. And then it's mixed regionally, right? Like we can't just think about our neighborhoods anymore. We have to think about the regional diasporas that development and gentrification has brought upon this situation. And so all that to say solidarity is complicated, but it means a constant commitment to engaging, into feeling, into looking into yourself and seeing what your privileges are and seeing which ways externally you can engage with your own community and then other communities. Sorry, talking too much.
Great, thank you both. I think we're going to open it up to the audience now. If you all have any questions for our panelists, or panelists, if you have questions of our audience, this can be a two-way dialogue, a multi-way dialogue.
I guess the question that you all posed to us, I would pose to the audience. What does Asian Black unity, Black Asian unity look like to you? What do you want to see? What is our future, especially given this crazy, interesting time in the country? And what we know when tensions rise, it boils down to what we saw with the pandemic and attacks on the Asian community, and what we see with the impacts of the pandemic on Black and Brown communities. You know, has much changed, and what do we need to do collectively to really move this country forward?
Rosie looked like she want to say something. Go ahead, Rosie.
You know, my friends say I don't have a poker face. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. So, you know, thanks, Tommy. Yeah, today the intersection of conversations I've had today really have primed me up for tonight. So I appreciate it and I thank you. I'm here in the DC area, and we've been talking a lot about everything which is going on the Hill, moving things through policy, policy, policy. And yet it truly is the art, it's the culture which actually shifts. It actually shifts folks on the ground. Because when did the Voting Rights Act in the 60s? And here we are 50, 60 years later, still having those challenges. But we have to shift on the ground with this openness and with strategies. So the pieces, the elements which your organizations have put together, it's awful to say, but what can we learn in a much more accelerated fashion? Because now is the time. This has been whatever overlap we've been having in this time zone. And so I'm shifting the question back around, CJ, Carolyn, to what elements, I don't want to extract from the learnings but we need help.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think for me, very Western educated, didn't really get involved in the nonprofits and cultural world until later on in life. And so I think really centering each of our unique cultures and our culture and standing those up and not being afraid to do that. I know when sometimes people say Asian community, I'm like, it's a lot, that's a broad group. And I think it's beautiful to elevate the differences and the cultures and to just center that, because I think centering your unique culture, like Tommy said, we're not all melting potable, I think is what he said. I think the beauty of our country will be when everyone can acknowledge their heritage uniquely beyond the groups, like even the Black community. Now, when I remember I moved to New York and people would come up to me speaking another language and then they were my skin, but I'm not Afro-Latino. I didn't even know about Afro-Latinos. So I went to New York. I didn't know about Haitians really, and Jamaicans and Caribbean, and that they're different. And everybody should be able to elevate that. And I think that will be a boom for this country. I think even white Americans need to be free to really say, I'm Irish, or I'm this, or I'm that. So culture, I think, and the arts that expresses those things are really more of a strategy than I thought. And I think it could be what could actually save us. I think that's going to be important. I think another thing that I would say is that when holding up culture, whether it be from a neighborhood or a culture in general, you have to have people who are from that culture. So I think one of the reasons why I can be more successful at the East Oakland Black Cultural and Collaborative is I am truly, truly from here, like born and raised. And you have to find those folks who are from, not that no one who can't from East Oakland do it, but if you don't elevate the people who know really what's going on, I think it's very harmful. It just lacks credibility, and it's just the way. I won't go to Detroit, even if it's a Black Detroit, and be like, I know what I'm doing. I'm not from Detroit, And I think you have to find those people. And I think you do, in terms of strategy, I think everyone needs to figure out that everyone has a lane. And like, we have a collaborative now, 40 plus organizations, and we are like, I don't do residential. I don't do film. I don't do this. I do community development from a commercial perspective. But at the core of that, as we fan out and know what our roles are, it's based on a common strategy. We want to build a thriving East Oakland, centering Black arts and culture, a legacy community that was there. And of course, embracing all the communities, but we'll all do it in a different way. We have to constantly check in and communicate. So those are three of the things that I would say. And I'd love to hear what Tommy thinks.
Making sure I don't go all over the place with this. Do you want to focus it just really quickly for me again, one more time? Please, Rosie. Like, is there something, off of what CJ said, is there anything that you want me to add on to?
No, I actually like it when you go all over the place.
Yeah, Jesus. Okay. I appreciate that very much. So I think, and this goes back to the idea of solidarity, is there's been, obviously there's been a lot of AAPI hate crimes happening. And I venture to say it's been happening a long, long time here in Oakland and throughout the country. But it's created a macro lens on localism, right? Like for us in Oakland, Chinatown, there's all this like stuff happening with older Asians getting hurt. A lot of this are folks of, people, a lot of Black folks with mental illnesses, which is a very, very important thing to add to this conversation. But what gets seen on camera is like a Black person hitting an elder Asian, and what it's caused in our city is hyper localism, and all our community efforts focusing in on Chinatown or Eastlake or like things like that, where the picture is much, much bigger than that, right? And it's divisive. It becomes a divisive crabs in a bucket kind of a thing, where it's all about that incident that gets replayed over and over and over again, that creates all these political conversations and power conversations and then money conversations coming from the government about these things. And I think the way I'm feeling, and when I talk to CJ about these kinds of things, it's our world is way more expansive than that. Our world is way more multifaceted and way more beautiful than what gets pounded in your head over and over by the media. And so the way we want to focus in terms of solidarity, in terms of working with CJ and folks like that, is really to illuminate the rest. Like we've been brought up thinking about, oh, we're the other. But the other is, there's so much to the other, right? And so at least from our point of view, from Civic Design Studio, from Good Eatz, is we need to show more. And we need to cross these bridges more. And we need to, like when CJ and them start up the Black Cultural Zone, we're gonna support them in any which ways we can, right? Like to get the roller skate running, to get social media marketing going, to help their young chefs get going. And that's irrespective of all this other stuff that's happening, because it's a much stronger narrative for us as a nation to build. And I know I told you, you should tell me you should limit what I'm saying.
I loved and like really wanted to pick up on the one specific word that you just said, Tommy, which is narrative. We had Charles from the Movement for Black Lives join the circle like as a panelist a couple weeks ago. And he had shared with us on how one of the key outcomes from M4BL's just like movement making was narrative shift around Black folks, right? And the introduction of Black joy, Black girl magic, right? Like all of these new ways of conceiving of Black folks, and like kind of in some way control or take ownership of the narrative that like is perpetuated in so many other circles in media, like you said, Tommy, right? And then, so since then I've been just thinking a lot about, and we've heard the call from other like Indigenous leaders too, of like, we do need to shift this narrative and like propel more of a, whether it's Black Asian unity, whatever the hashtag or the right way to describe it is, but it's just shifting that narrative and highlighting more of these examples of solidarity, of like these relationships like y'all have over decades, right? There's so many more, but just like elevating and like prioritizing that narrative change. So I'm curious from the group, y'all, you two, just like thinking about narrative change. Like how do we do that, right? How do we coordinate multiple groups to do it together?
Well, I'll go, and that's great. The narrative and what's being told. I always make this joke whenever I go on like Netflix or Amazon Prime. I'm like, goodness gracious, can I find one show about Black folks and it's not like, oh my God, they were in jail or they killed someone. And it's really bad when you look at and forget, I can't even imagine. And I think about like other stories of the Asian community, and it's probably even less available. I mean, it's just, you know, they're so stereotypical. And I just wonder how, and I love how you talk about how can we, I mean, that could be something that we decide to do collectively to say, we're going to show those stories, whether, you know, there's a month or there's time in the poetry contest, everywhere you'll see just something love and beauty, like Sophie's Love on Amazon Prime. I so love that movie because it was just a story of Black love. Nobody died, nobody got killed, nobody was shooting dope in the neck, and any of this craziness. And it's like, who are these people? And I know it happens, but the full spectrum, and I think that full spectrum is important of Asian Black unity, because I think sometimes the younger kids, when I tell them stuff like, I said, do you know who the Black Panthers were formed by? That it included an Asian person, like that's not true. And it's like, oh my God, we have failed, that you don't know this, that you don't know that the Black culture was on. I had to tell some of the folks in the collaborative, I said, do you know that at least 2 Asian people were involved in the call for a Black culture zone? What? So it's on us to tell those stories, and something that you have to show it graphically and with arts and in film and in movie. But a coordinated effort is always what I'm about, because I am like a military person. It's like, okay, what's the plan? What's the strategy? Let's not just talk about it. Let's just say this month or this quarter or this, we're going to really elevate those stories and get those conversations going in the cooking and in the visuals and the poetry contrasts and all that stuff, because the kids don't know, and it's sad. So I'm going to stop there.
I didn't have, I'm not sure if I have anything to really add with authority around narrative change, but going back to a couple comments before when CJ and Tommy were talking about solidarity, your comments and your sharing today made me think about how are the many different ways over my lifetime I've gained political education just through the things I experience in life, going to the store, going to school, going to work, being on the bus, and how all those things add up to sometimes it does, because sometimes it doesn't, but it's a political education. So I'm an immigrant, but I grew up in North Carolina, where the Klan made it really clear that they didn't like African Americans and they didn't like Koreans or Asians. But growing up, like the Klan is right there, you know, in our lives and in the community, but you could tell the consequences of that were different. If you're an Asian woman, if you're a Black boy, if you're an elder, or you know English or not. So I guess my thought was like, how do we build solidarity over a lifetime through these really daily interactions? So as a child, I saw how Black men, Black boys, Black girls got treated differently. I didn't get treated much better, but it was different, different type of treatment. And you start building an analysis based on what you're experiencing. But then here's the part that I think Tommy and Carolyn and Rosie was sort of pointing to. But then when you have your kind of analysis and these inklings for solidarity, you have to be able to be together, do together, eat together, work together. And I think when you, especially now, I can't imagine any organization now doing anything on their own without reaching out, at least in partnership, you know. And yes, you could be culturally specific and manage and organize your own community and your people, but there's no reason why you don't share, celebrate, and partner with multicultural different issues and backgrounds. So I think I'm hoping it becomes like a competency that any of us, even when we do for ourselves, we're never doing it alone, and we have a responsibility to make sure others are successful. So, and that's in storytelling and all those things. But I really think about a lot of my political education has been just through just living and walking through this world. And I'm lucky that I've had experiences where we can talk and then have a specific political education, like maybe through the circle or through school or through work, but not everyone has had those organized experiences yet, but they can in the community. And I think that's what that roller skating park that Tommy keeps referring to is for. You can do it while you're on 8 wheels, you know? So anyway, just very, admiration and respect for the work that you're doing there. But that is exactly what we need, is more of exactly what you're doing.
I think, I just want to quickly add, and thank you. That was so well put. The need for democratic spaces to expand, the need for immigrant portals to expand, the need for Black spaces to expand is what we need as a country. And yeah, so thank you for that.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. I don't know what better note we could have ended on, which is solidarity in all of our daily experiences, right? Everywhere that we are. So I just want to ask everyone if you could just quickly unmute yourself and just show some appreciation for CJ and Tommy. And thank you for being here with us, for the work that you're doing and just being part of the broader Lunar Project community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So they have an amazing Instagram, both Black Cultural Zone and Good Good Eats. You need to follow. Will make you very hungry and want to go out and have fun.
And then we want you to invite us to your city, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
folks.
you.
Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.